Welcome to the Oh So Spurs podcast, where we are celebrating another victory, sit top of the table, once again another weekend. And today we'll be discussing a number of interesting topics: the win against Palace, Bentancur's return. Should Johnson start ahead of Richarlison against Chelsea? The stats behind why Tottenham deserve to be where they are on the table. Should we boo Poch or not? And what do we do to prepare for the African Cup of Nations and the Asia Cup? We've also got a special guest of us today, Rad from UAE Spurs. How are you, Rad?
How are you doing? All right, thank you very much.
Good to have you on, mate, and we look forward to chatting with you as the pod goes on. But
sure.
Actually, let's start with you, Rad. You watched the Palace game. Where did you watch it, and what did you make of Spurs' performance?
I was actually at home with my 83-year-old father-in-law, who I converted to be a Spurs supporter a few years back. And he's an avid fan now. He lives in Jordan. He's over here for a few days, so I watched it with him. And first half is really it was a non-event. Palace were quite happy to get to see a 0-0. Spurs weren't creating much, not a lot going on. And I think the big issue we had really was Ben Davies with Richarlison on the left. Just nothing was happening there. And in my humble opinion, I think this last time we'll see Davies in the Spurs shirt ever again, unfortunately, to join Dyer and Lloris through the exit door. Second half, I think Emerson was a right back, did a great job on the left. And we just there's more urgency, more pace on the ball. We created more and we won the game. Imagine a bit of a rocket from Ange at halftime on top of that, which helped.
Yeah, I think you're right about Davies. It's sad in the sense that I think we all know he's got a great work ethic and been a really important squad player for us at certain moments for Tottenham because he's a versatile player. But in Ange Ball, he just doesn't seem to be the right fit. What do you think?
No pace.
No. That's it. No pace. But maybe a useful left centre back in an emergency case until we get to January and sign a proper one. But Deej, what about you? What did you make of the performance and any comments on Davies?
I think that a lot of our struggles can come down to the fact that kind of like like we were talking about before the game, Crystal Palace just kind of sat with 11 men behind the ball and weren't really looking to do all that much before we scored our second. If I'm being honest, I thought that our first half was frustrating because I guess of a lack of creativity. Part of it was because I think Davies isn't used to being as advanced as Udogie is, and I mean I can't necessarily hold it against Davies for not being as good as Udogie because that dude is incredible. But I thought that I thought perhaps we were being a little bit harsh on Richarlison. I think he created the two best chances of the first half for Maddison, and with the cushion down header, and then playing Maddison in, and Maddison just couldn't find anyone on the cross. I think once Johnson came in, I think having that kind of burst of pace down the left was good. I thought that Johnson also performed pretty well in link-up play. Obviously had the assist, and the header to get the ball to Maddison before that as well. Overall, I thought it was a pretty solid away day, considering we won 6 games away last year. I think we've already won 4, so can't complain too much about that. Should have been 2-0 because I was not aware of a new rule where you could just bring the ball down with your hand as long as you're playing against Tottenham. But other than that, I don't know. Not too much to complain about because I know a win's a win.
And Stu, your Italian goalkeeper made a very nice save at the start of the game. What did you make of the performance?
Yeah, I mean, I just think he's. I mean, I know everyone keeps saying Alisson's the best, but for me, he's at the same level as Alisson. He's been the best goalkeeper in the league this season. He's been unbelievable. And, I was saying last week he doesn't pull off too many world-class saves. He's just solid. But he pulled off a couple of absolute stunners at an important time on Friday. I was so chuffed for him. And, the team spirit, you can see that everyone has no doubt. I was kind of gutted for him that he lost his clean sheet at the end, with that clearly handball. But as I said at the time, I think we're paying for the Liverpool game, and I just wonder how long we're going to pay for that Liverpool game, because that was clearly a VAR decision that didn't go our way. And how many fouls was it before they finally got a yellow card after the Fulham and Palace games combined. Ridiculous.
Somewhere in
Yeah.
the 30s.
And
I think.
and Johnny, I mean, you were the probably I'd give you the medal for being the earliest convert to Ange Postecoglou back in February or March time when we first started talking about him. And our initial reaction was to discredit him a little bit based on not having managed in the top 3 or 4 leagues of world football. You must be absolutely loving the ride still. And what were your thoughts on how he set up the team against Palace?
Yeah, it was. I guess we won. We got the 3 points. I think all the boys have made some really valid observations. There's I guess the other major bonus from there were a few things really, like Bentancur's return is obviously huge. He wasn't supposed to be coming back until a good bit into November, and I think Ange said after the game that he's been kind of banging on his door for a few weeks to get in. So like the motivation for him to play is obviously really, really high. The fact is Basuma didn't get his booking, so he's available for Chelsea. He's another major positive. I have to. There was a funny episode in our house whenever Bentancur was coming on, and my son Callum was getting very excited, and we saw them lined up ready to come onto the pitch, and I was more excited. I noticed Brian Heel coming on at the same time, and I was so excited to see Brian Heel. And I was like, "Yeah, Brian's coming on." And Cam's like, "No, Bentancur's coming on." And I was like, "Oh." I just love Brian Heel, so it's great to have him back. I know he's not got the same pedigree or hasn't proven himself like Bentancur has, but it's still, especially with our issues on the left, it's great to have him back. And of course, BrenanJohnson. BrenanJohnson was absolutely superb, and didn't have to take long before he made a significant impact. And his pace and like Stu was just saying at the end of the game, that whole kind of phenomenon that we have, that Ange has fostered this amazing spirit, the connection with the supporters, the love for Bentancur, especially at the end when they were going over to the away fans. Like it's just really just wonderful, isn't it? Like we're saying the same. We're really lucky we were able to say the same stuff every week. After every podcast, it's just like long may it continue. It's just absolutely superb. And the last thing I'd say, which I was really, really pleased with, was Sonny, the way he, after all the concerns or worries about his fitness with the whole business playing for South Korea and stuff that we're talking about recently, the fact is, like, he was running like like some kind of, relentless Duracell bunny all the way to the end, like 31 years of age. Like he was absolutely on fire, and he kept going to the end. I was delighted to see that as well. So a lot of real positives, despite the fact that the first half wasn't very convincing. But you got to win those games if you are going to be up there challenging, and we're still doing it at the moment. So yeah.
Well, I think like we've said before on previous episodes, the statistics show it's not about beating the top 2 or 3 teams in the league away from home and at home each season. If you beat the 17 other teams away from home and at home all season, you're likely to win something, or at least finish in that top 2. So these are the kind of the games, like you're saying, we just have to win. But you touched on Bentancur returning there, and Rad, I'm interested to hear from you. Do you think he's going to walk in and replace Sarr when he's fully fit, or do you think Sarr did
really
enough
difficult one, because I tell you what I thought yesterday. Another thing when you asked me, just remembered, is Basuma wasn't really on his game yesterday, was he?
No.
I think he had a bit of an off day, and he's got nothing to do with that. He gets booked a lot. And I'm just thinking, could it be that we could have a Sarr, Bentancur, Madison axis? Is that a possibility? Because I think Basuma's been amazing, but he's got this odd, off day, or which all players do, I suppose. But I just think it happens more, and he gets booked a lot. Obviously, he's been suspended. He's got the other 4 yellow cards hanging over his head for another nine games. And I just wonder if Ange looks at it and says, you know what, I'm getting Bentancur in there. Having said all that, come Jan, both are going to be gone for 2 weeks to a month. And by the way, we're going to lose some for the Asia Cup as well on top of that in Jan. It's only a couple of months away.
Yeah, I think
so.
We're going to.
It'd be interesting to see whether they keep Højbjerg or sell him and get somebody else in. Skip, it's such a disappointment. I thought it'd be like, one of those great sort of homegrown finds. Another Winks, Mason, Carroll, unfortunately, in my opinion. Maybe a bit better, but not much better in how I see it. It's been a disappointment. I thought he'd do a lot better by now. He's 23 now, isn't he?
Yeah, it's a tough one with him. I kind of feel like if we played a system that really suited his specific
Yes.
strengths, he'd probably be doing pretty well and would be going, what a great squad player. But he doesn't seem like a long-term fit to Ange Postecoglou's system.
But I think with the going back to the Sarr, Bentancur, Basuma, you need that in every squad anyway.
You do, yeah.
No one's going to play every game anyway, regardless. And I think he'll switch it depending on how the game is going and who's fit and suspensions and all that kind of thing. So it'll be all right. It'd be great, actually, more than all right.
Yeah, I agree, and it's like as we've had debates in this pod before about Kulusevski, and I'm going to go on to Deej next because I always bring Kulusevski onto Deej as a topic. But I think we need to be a club that says, okay, if BrenanJohnson is going to be our future right winger, he's going to play left wing now because there's a gap there and there's a need there. But I still think Ange has signed him as a long-term right winger. That does not mean that Kulusevski is not a key player to this team and has a key future. It just means that you have 4 or 5 players to fill 2 or 3 roles that are of a really high level, so that when you have these rotations, these injuries, these cuts coming up, you still maintain the level of performance you need to challenge in every game. But Deej, and on that, what about Johnson coming in ahead of Richarlison for Chelsea? Do you think that's going to happen, or did you see us mixing up and maybe putting Johnson on the right and Kulusevski on the left? Do you see any changes?
I mean, we'll talk about this more in the preview pod because I'm probably going to go back and rewatch the Palace game because I was watching on another dodgy stream. So I spent half of the time refreshing my browser. So I need to, catch an actual full match replay. But I think Richarlison actually could be useful in this game because of his pressing ability. I've said that before, and I'll say it again. But I think that if he's trying to dribble, if he's trying to take on his man, and unfortunately for now, if he's trying to shoot, he seems pretty useless. But I think in build-up, as long as he's getting the ball out from under his feet quickly, and obviously on the when we're pressing, he does really well, and I think he creates a lot of problems for an opposition defense, and especially because Chelsea can't figure out their back four, it seems. Having someone like Richarlison to pester whatever makeshift wing back they have that day, assuming actually I guess Reece James would be on the right, but having someone to just pester that back line is something that we could use. And I'm not saying that Johnson couldn't do that. Perhaps we bring Johnson in and Johnson does just as well. I'm just saying that I can only go based off of what I've seen this season, and I haven't really seen Johnson press for the duration of time that would be required. Because it's not just about pressing for the first 15 minutes, and I think that's what Richarlison does really well, is he presses for the entire time he's on the pitch, even if that's only 60, 75 minutes. I think that he's a nuisance the whole time, and that press, I mean, we saw with Fulham, our press causes goals. So having someone like that, especially against, like I said, a team in Chelsea who still haven't really figured it out necessarily, could be really useful. I wouldn't be mad if Johnson started, but wouldn't be mad if Richarlison did either.
Interesting. Stu, I'm gonna ask you this question, but do you think we have been slightly fortunate in games to get these kind of goals high up on the pitch, where we've forced the opposition to errors, or is that down to good tactics that are effectively doing what they're supposed to do?
No, I think it's part of the tactics. I mean, the whole point that I think Ange got across to the team, and I remember Son come out with it during preseason, was that it is a lot easier to score a goal. You have a lot less distance to cover if you get the ball back in their third rather than in our third, which is what we were doing under Conte and Mourinho. So the fact we're pressing, getting the ball back, putting them under pressure, making sure they don't have time to think, they're making mistakes which lead to goals. I mean, I don't think it is luck. We're doing it game after game after game. So you can clearly see it's part of the strategy, and it's something that Ange got across to the squad from the beginning, and that's why I think they've all bought into it. And the fact that obviously they're seeing the results every game, you can see they're buying into it more and more. And I think Deej made a great point. I don't like that we always have to have a boo boy, and we have to have a player in the team that everyone has to go and slag off and say we need to sell. And I think Richarlison does offer so much. Both him and Kulu are constantly running, constantly pressuring. So by the time they go off, their left back and right back are absolutely knackered, which I think helped the likes of Johnson when he came on, because he was running against someone who's already been shattered by having to deal with Richarlison, who, yes, in front of goal isn't great, but he's hassling them and tiring them out for the entire game. So I think going back to your question, yes, it is part of the strategy. It's not luck, and I think it's a squad game, and everyone's buying into it and taking advantage of it.
It's with Richie, he kind of reminds me a little bit of when we signed Eric Lamela, because we all expected this goal scorer that was going to kind of fill a big void that we had and be this versatile player that could play on the front three. But he's been more of a hard-working player that does what the manager asks in terms of the hard press work and filling certain spaces and just playing wherever he's told to play, essentially. That's kind of my view on him anyway. But I think you're right. We shouldn't get too obsessed with always needing to attack our weakest player, inverted commas, on the pitch that we deem as disposable goods that we should get on their back off.
I think with Richarlison is not really, I would say, is the weakest. I mean, you guys rightly pointed out so far as his pressing, his assist, you can't fault that. But we pay £60 million for this guy to score goals and be a striker, and it's not happening. And that's why Son is in the middle. And this big Brazilian guy, who's a Brazilian number 9, is out on the left if he ever starts. And that's the disappointment. That's the sort of sad part for me. Is that's not what we got him for. But if he does the job, fine. But I think we also, when Johnson came on, the amount of pace and running and the 1-2s with Maddison, which is Richarlison's not good at that.
No,
that's that's why I like to see Johnson start, but we'll see.
Like you say, it's if we bought him for £10 million, I don't think he'd be getting any stick at all.
Even 20, but 60.
Even
second highest signing after Ndombele.
Yeah,
only by 3 million.
I think that's where, as fans, I don't blame that on the player. I blame that on the scouting department
and
the leadership.
Yeah.
And
but you're right. Obviously, but
but
it's still a lot of money.
It is a lot of money. Yeah. And we'll always think, what else we could have bought with that money? But anyway,
the thing about strikers, though, when they don't score goals, I mean, it's like it doesn't matter how long you've been watching football. There's always somebody who's in the same situation that Richarlison's in now. Yeah. And the fact is, I remember last season, in a really grim season, like actually, especially when Richie was new to the team, when he did come on, he was playing with much more kind of purpose and self-belief, and he unfortunately was affected by injuries and so on, but I thought he looked dangerous. I was really excited about him in the first few months of last season, and that's just what happens, isn't it? Think of Robbie Keane going off to Liverpool, and he ended up back at Spurs a few months later.
Didn't work.
I think again with Liverpool, Peter Crouch couldn't score for a very long time over there as well. I mean, really good players just go through these patches, and unfortunately for Richarlison, he's just not finding the net, and he's really, really struggling. And it is one of those ones you just sort of wait. Does he just need to hit the back of the net, and then the confidence will come? I know he did get that goal against Fulham. He scored against one of those late games. Was it the Sheffield United win? So I don't know, and I think you're right. It's the price tag that's the problem, because his work rate and his pressing and what he brings the team, he's undoubtedly making a contribution. Like Deej said the last pod, I think he's got second highest number of assists or something like that. So he's still performing the role. It's just not what he's been brought in to do. And Johnson looks kind of like the way that I was describing Richie before when Richie joined. That's kind of what Johnson's looking now. He's got the advantage of youth in the side as well.
Yeah, agree. I think that's a good point. And I was going to ask you one more thing, Johnny, about whether, because I know you feel passionate about this one, talking of players which fans are getting on the back of a bit. I was going to ask about an ex-manager returning to the stadium. But just before we do that, I wanted to just quickly run over some statistics, which I found really interesting. And I'll share my screen for those watching on YouTube. And if you're listening on audio, I know that's fine. We can talk you through it as well. But like, there's been a lot of debate of whether our position in the table following another narrow victory against a side in the bottom half has been, lucky in inverted commas, and our Spurs kind of overperforming. And this was super interesting because all the statistics and facts, if you take emotion out of it, say this is by no way luck at all. We should be sat in a wedge with Arsenal and Manchester City in the table. And the fact people say, we haven't played anyone good yet. Someone told me, and I confirmed it's true, out of the 10 teams we've played and Arsenal have played, 7 of them are the same. And we've played more of those teams away from home than they have. They've had more home games. So we've statistically had pretty much an equal start to Arsenal in terms of difficulty. Yet, we're always kind of hit with Spurs had an easy start. On top of that, XG-wise, Spurs have the second best in the league. Only Newcastle have more. And crucially, we've had 25 more shots than any other team in the league, showing that we're, peppering the opposition more than anyone else, and with good chances as well. And in terms of chances conceded, this is where people always go, it's only a matter of time until Spurs have found out, and they got lucky because they've got a world-class goalkeeper, it seems, who keeps bailing them out. Well, I'm sorry, but that's just as important as having a world-class striker. That doesn't make a difference. We still have. We're still in terms of conceding chances in the top 6 in the league at, not conceding chances, if that makes sense. So we're the bottom 6 of conceding chances. So it shows that defensively, despite all this, we're still doing really, really well. And the last thing was zones of control. And if you're watching on the screen, basically what you see is maps of a pitch. And if it's blue or grey, if it's blue, it means you're controlling the pitch. And if it's red, it means the opposition's controlling the pitch there. We are basically dominating the entire pitch for every single game outside of where the opposition goalkeeper is standing. And that is exactly the same for only one other team in Manchester City. So what these stats show is basically Spurs and Man City are statistically the strongest teams in the Premier League. Anyway, I just wanted to get that off my chest because I feel there's still a bit of kind of insecurity that we might not be as good as we are at the top of the table. But I think we really are. We could go on this road.
Can I just add one obvious point here? Is this: if you're top after 2, 3, or 4 games, element of luck here, element of who you played, but 10 games, come on, including Man U, Liverpool, and Arsenal, you deserve to be there regardless of the stats, which are great stats, by the way.
And we've played a lot of away games as well.
Yes.
I think that kind of gets overlooked a bit. But I wanted to go on to the next topic. And Johnny, we just touched on it there. And I think I'll let anyone who disagrees say their piece as well on this one. But we've got an ex-Spurs manager in Poch returning to the ground. There's been a lot of debate online on whether we should greet him back with hostility or with a kind of warm welcome of thanks for everything that happened. Or somewhere in between. But Johnny, I think you were quite passionate on one side of this, so I want to kind of start with you on how you think we should handle the reception.
Yeah. Okay. Listen, I'd say we all. Well, I assume most of us agree about how we feel towards Pochettino, like until he joined Chelsea, and then maybe people's opinion changes at that point. I wish he hadn't joined Chelsea because. I want him to fail, but I love the man as a man and what he brought to us, the memories he brought us, and the incredible. I know we didn't actually win a trophy, which is obviously kind of what the end objective is, but that wasn't entirely down to him, and we still had some amazing experiences, and it was just a great time to enjoy supporting Spurs. So I think from everything that he's brought and the feelings that we had and the connections we had with him, for me. I think that's still something that matters to me personally. And I obviously don't like Chelsea. They are behind Arsenal in the kind of in the vitriol, but they're not a whole lot behind. I would be looking forward to the game. I'm looking forward to being there side to side that game, and we'll be giving it absolutely everything in terms of trying to make it a hostile environment for the Chelsea team. But personally, I don't think it would be good for Tottenham as a club, as a fan base, if we give him pelters to be honest with you. Like, I just don't think. I think you're better to do nothing than to do that, and they're not going to do nothing. I personally would give him a round of applause and welcome back, but I hope to Christ he goes away with a really heavy defeat, and then we can just move on, because it's like it doesn't reflect well on the club, and I think there are other clubs that don't have class. We want to be a club that has a bit more class than that, and I just think it's the man's given so much to Tottenham. Also, like, in fairness to Poch, like, where was he going to go after PSG? He was waiting for the Spurs to call, probably, wasn't he, for a long time, and it just didn't come. So what's he supposed to do? I mean, okay, you can say he wouldn't join Chelsea for however many million they're offering. I don't know. I mean, it's not like he's like us and has been supporting Spurs all his life. He obviously has feelings about Tottenham, and he knows there's a rivalry, but he's got a career as well to think about. So personally, I think it's just a bit of an unfortunate situation, but he deserves to be welcomed back, in my opinion.
Okay,
and let's just make it tough for the team, make it tough for the players, the Chelsea players.
We'll get a couple more opinions on that, but I'm not sure I'm quite with you on applauding a Chelsea manager, John. I'm more in the camp of he doesn't deserve any extra stick because he's Mauricio Pochettino, but any Chelsea manager that comes to that ground, I'm going to treat the same way. I'm not going to go out my way to be abusive or anything like that, but I'm going to dislike them for those 90 minutes that we're playing against them, and I'm going to react accordingly as part of that crowd. But Deej, what about you? How would you treat him?
I mean, obviously, as a younger fan, I kind of basically grew up more or less with Poch, so he holds a special place in my heart. I know that's the same with a lot of fans, especially those my age. That being said, it does feel a bit weird to be applauding a Chelsea manager, in my opinion. I think it's probably just one of those things where the good and the bad kind of cancel out. Maybe give him like a golf clap on the way out, and then a round of applause after we spank them on the way out. I think that's probably the perfect scenario. But what I'm assuming is going to happen is there's going to be some people who are clapping him, some people who are giving him pelters, and then another chunk of people who are just doing nothing. So it'll be a very weird walking out for him, I think, all things considered.
Interesting. And Rad, what about you? What are you thinking?
I don't know how it's
what
going to pan out, but I'm in Johnny's camp on this one. I'll applaud the guy. I had a lot of time for Poch. I think he gave us hope. I think up to Ange, before Ange, is one of only 3 managers in the last 20-odd years that I really sort of admired. It's him, Redknapp, and Yol. Okay, even though Hoddle, my hero, was there, he didn't do much, but really those 3. So for me, I think before kickoff, round of applause, and then as soon as it kicks off, make it as hostile as possible, as we know we can. Simple as that. And smash them. But before kickoff, give him a round of applause. He deserves it. 5.5 years he gave us. Sure, no trophies, but who I never thought, I'm 56 years old, to see the day my team is the Champions League final or challenging for the league title or playing in semi-finals and finals. 4 finishes and all that. So yeah, I'm in Johnny's camp on this one.
Well,
the other thing in there, sorry, Jim, just to hop in. I mean, remember when he was fired, and obviously Levy had Mourinho lined up quite clearly. He left the message on the flip chart in the dressing room and stuff. Like, the supporters haven't seen him since then. And I know he's the Chelsea manager. I totally get you, Jim. I absolutely 100% understand what you're saying. But we haven't had a chance to say goodbye to him. Never mind.
Yeah.
Like, you got a chance to say, welcome back. Like, we still love you. And I'm like, well, teach, you love him. Like, you love the guy, but he is a Chelsea manager, and you want him to have a really shit evening after he's had a round of applause. Simple as that.
That's it.
I think I agree with the general sentiment. I loved the bloke. I mean, the last couple of years I wasn't that enamored with him flirting with United and Real Madrid, and I think he's overrated as a manager. But I love the bloke, and so I would never boo him, and I would never condone any booing of him. However, I wouldn't applaud him before the game. I would applaud him after the game, but not before the game.
I think, is it fair though, if we go 3-0 up to sing Mauricio Pochettino, he's magic, in a
No, I
sarcastic
wouldn't
way?
go that far. No, you've gone way over the line.
I don't
Johnny will
think you'll
say
be able
that.
to stop the South Stand if that happens.
Yeah, that's not going to happen. No.
Well, Sai's not on here, but he's a fellow season ticket holder and he sits in the East now. He was South last year, but he is I'd say the opposite side of the spectrum to maybe the rest of the panel on today, where he's very much dead to me, Chelsea, you're off. You are public enemy number one, and I will be booing at the first opportunity. So we don't have him on to kind of provide that both sides of the coin. So I felt I should just say Sai's stance. Yeah.
The other thing I saw, I think HG was posted in the group earlier today, and there's like a variation on the "He's magic, that you have Agent Pochettino, he's magic, which is a kind of more of a barb at Chelsea. That would be quite amusing.
We'll applaud him and then say Pochettino's dead with the Ange song.
Yeah, exactly.
You can keep your Pochettino, but we're applauding him. It's a bit of a,
Yeah.
Robbie Williams' job. Yeah.
I just...
I do think that the last thing, I do think that Johnny is spot on with the fact that we need to show that we're classier than other clubs. And, it's something other managers will see. And I think Ange himself will see. And I think we need to show that, just because you left us, we don't start hating you and booing you. I think, there's indifference before is fine. Clap him after. But don't boo him. Come on.
Yeah, I kind of feel like it's not... It just looks a bit small time to go out your way to, boo an ex-manager to that extent. Because I kind of feel like we're having such a good season. Why is this even a talking point for us? We should be thinking about is how can win that game and extend our lead at the top of the table and be grateful for how we're playing. I just don't see Poch returning as this massive deal it needs to be. But there was...
I wonder, Jim, though, sorry, just something else flipped into my head. If Chelsea weren't... Because I think part of the reason why we're talking about it is because Chelsea are really average and they obviously got rolled over again yesterday. If Chelsea were up fighting at the right, for their point of view, the right end of the table, and there was much more on the line, and I know there's a lot on the line. It's a derby, it's a big game anyway. But if it was in terms of league placings, a closer affair, I think if I was being honest, I would find it a bit more difficult myself because they're almost, I'm not saying irrelevant, but they're really not in the same picture as the other top teams. So I think that takes a bit of the sting away from it. So I feel a bit more benign towards him because Chelsea are so poor. I think that's partly to play in the situation.
Say real quick to add on to that, I think you make a great point because I think if the season starts differently and they're in third or fourth and we're in fourth or fifth, he's just going to get booed. I think part of the reason that we haven't attached a more negative opinion on Pochettino is because he's been so shit with Chelsea and because Chelsea have been so shit with him that we still look at him as the good ex-Tottenham manager, not the good Chelsea manager, because no Tottenham fan is booing the good Chelsea manager. No matter what he did for us. I still think that even if it were that, me personally, I don't think I would boo him. I think it would be just a case of the past is in the past, more or less. We move on. We have Postecoglou. But I think that the general sentiment would be much less split than it is now in terms of do we clap a guy who is taking Chelsea towards Champions League places versus an ex-Tottenham manager who's taking Chelsea to mid-table. Yeah, taking them to the championship, exactly.
I think that's a fair comment. It's if they, that's what I was kind of, when I was on mute there, trying to get to, is similar to you, Deej. If we're 3-0 down to them in the 70th minute, I think all goes out the window and suddenly this almost patronising, no, we're not going to boo you, you're one of our own. Suddenly he's an arsehole, especially as he was celebrating those goals against us, even though it's his complete job to do so. But there's one more topic to touch on. We don't have much time to go into it, but I wanted to give everyone a chance to give their opinion. The January transfer window is coming up, and one of the reasons, look, there's no point discussing a centre-back, is there? That is the minimum expectation of the window. Is we all know
100%.
we need a centre back. Like that. That is just, if that doesn't happen, everyone on the fan base will kick off, and understandably so. But there are a couple of other positions people think we need, and that's partly because we're going to lose 2 midfielders to the African Cup of Nations, and we're also going to lose Sonny in the Asia Cup. So, is there also an expectation that we sign a striker in this window? And if so, and I'm going to caveat that a little bit, what's your expectation of the level of signing here? Do we need to go all out to an upgrade on the first team type? Like, how does it all fit in? Because in my eyes, Sonny's now the default number 9, and I want to see what you guys think. Rad, I'll start with you on this one.
I mean, centre back, we need a left back. We always touched on Davis, not going to happen, and Sessigno's not going to happen either. We need a left back. Let's not miss our words here. Because
that's
Destiny
true.
is amazing. We need someone to cover for him. Unless we have somebody in the youth team I don't know about, that's going to be with the centre back. And midfield, it just depends if Højbjerg leaves or not. If he goes, then we have to get somebody else in, particularly with, as you said, with the African Cup of Nations. The striker one is very interesting because, Velez is there, but he's only 20. Son is 31, and he's not always 100%. So, where do you go? Do you go all out and get a big name, or do you get, I don't know. I mean, everyone's going to be after Ipenzoni in January, it looks like, Chelsea and Arsenal. So I'm not sure we'll be in that market. A striker of some sort that Ange is happy with. I don't know who or what kind of money we're talking about here, but you need a striker.
But are you thinking of like a backup striker, like a kind of Llorente type signing, or are you thinking?
It's like the situation we had about the competition we had about Bentancur and Sarr. You need to alternate. You need a squad. And we've got great cover in really many positions, particularly the wide positions is great. Midfield is good at the moment. If Højbjerg stays and Bentancur is back, centre back we'll get one more. Right back we've got Emerson and Porro. We need a left back. I think we need a striker and a centre back. That's just how I see it. It's about squad. It's not so bad as when Kane was with us, because who's going to play second fiddle to Kane because he want to get drops? But Son is 31. He's not always fit, so you need somebody to come in, maybe second half or start, and then Son comes in. You just don't know. And right now we've only got Richarlison. He can't do it. Velez is great, but he's only 20. He's new to the Premier League. Maybe in a couple of years, I don't know. I'm thinking maybe when we had like someone like Llorente, an experienced guy, and he did a good job. Maybe someone like that.
Do you agree, Stu? Do you be on the same page as that?
Yeah, I think it's difficult. I think left back, I agree we need to upgrade. I just don't know if we'll do it in January or more likely in the summer. I think another option for left back could be Reggie, because Reggie will be coming back in January because his loan was only until January. And he's been getting good game time. So will Ange look at it again if he's decided that Davies isn't going to be good enough to cut it? Because I'll be honest, I like Davies. I think he's a good squad player. But I don't think he's made for Ange Ball. But then again, he never plays, so the fact he was rusty against Palace, I think, is also understandable.
Stuart, quick question: Can we bring Reggie back as the?
Yeah, he's coming back. He only had a loan until January.
All right.
Because Man U had 2 or 3 left backs out injured, so they only loaned him until January.
Yeah, he's interesting. So we may well then find I think that would still leave us in a position where there's not someone in that position you could put in when Udogie's not available that you'd be confident to do a job. But I don't want to get too into that because we don't have enough time, and I'm sure that's going to open a can of worms around. Do we do enough in certain transfer windows at certain times? And it's going to divide some opinions. But did you agree with Rad and Stu? Do you think it's a left back and a striker, or is there someone else that we need to add in January?
I think our number one priority in the January window needs to be someone who can break their man down. Preferably a winger, probably a left winger. Because, like you said, I think Kulu long-term, or BrenanJohnson got there eventually, is our long-term right winger. And right now, I mean, everyone can see it, especially when we play against low blocks. Neither of our wingers are particularly gifted at breaking their man down 1v1. So having someone, obviously someone like Doku at City now is the type of player that would just take, I think, this team to the next level. I think that because we would be missing Son for, I think, 3 games, if 2, potentially 3 games, if South Korea go all the way in the Asian games. So I think, I think that if it's between a striker and a winger who can break their man down, I think I'm willing to take the Valise, Richarlison, anyone with a warm body as a 9 while Son's gone, if it means that we can get a winger who can break their man down. Because I think that'll add a dimension to our game that we don't have right now, and I think is probably more impactful than having another like experienced striker. I mean, obviously in a perfect world we get both, but I think that every single game we're crying out for a 1v1 winger, and I think that's when we can get that's starter quality. Whereas for a striker, I think we would have to go with someone who's either past their prime or not necessarily not one that could start for us week in, week out.
And Johnny, did you agree with Deej there? Any comments to add on the minimum expectations of the January transfer window for you?
No. I agree with all of the comments really on that. I don't suspect. I think if you have an open checkbook, you probably bring in Ivan Toney, but he's not going to. Like Chelsea and Arsenal need him more than we do probably, and they've got the checkbooks available that are probably going to bring him in. I think Deeja's right. I don't really. I've seen names around that are like quicker players who can play across the front as well. Like there's Atletico Bilbao, Nico Williams, supposed to be really fast, can play on the left or the right, and he's out of contract in the summer. So like that's a player. He's only 21 as well. So he seems to fit the profile from what we've been looking at. And the other one is Chiesa. He's at Juve at the moment, and I think he's also out of contract. So again, can play on either side. I'm not really sure in terms of what they can bring from the angle that Deej is talking about. Maybe that's something they can do. I don't know, but like they're certainly proven at a pretty high level. So I don't see the point in bringing in, like, I think Llorente did a fantastic job. He performed a specific role, but I don't think we need somebody like that, to be honest. Don't really. You kind of want to be bringing in players who, like you're saying about Johnson, is there as our first choice right wing. Well, I don't really look at it like that. I kind of think Johnson and Kulusevski are both there to like improve each other's game and challenge for each other, like when we had Trippier and Walker at the same time. Like they're both battling out for the starting 11, and yeah, they probably are both right is their side. So Kulusevski has improved since Johnson's come in, and I think we want to be adding in players to the squad that I think are going to be doing the same thing for whoever else is on the left, for Heel and for Solomon and Richie as well. So like I think that if you're going to buy somebody, I think for that position it needs to be somebody who's hopefully going to be around for a good few years.
I think that just to disagree, because I can't always agree on everything. I think we need a striker more than a winger, because I think Solomon is coming back, and I think Solomon. I like Solomon. I think he can take a player on. He looks to take a player on. Gilles, I still have hope that Paratici was right about him. He just was playing for the wrong manager. And referring to what Jim, I don't know if you said on the pod or in the group, but we don't have anybody but Son who scores goals. And bringing in another winger who can create chances is all very well and good, but you need someone to actually put it in the back of the net. And Son is 31, so at some point we are going to have to replace him. And I think that would be the position. The only problem I find is, as Rad said, Tony, etc., they're going to be expensive. And I think the only way we're going to be able to bring in somebody like that is if we can get them on a loan to buy in the summer. Or Lange and Paratici are going to pull someone else out the hat, because I think maybe a younger, maybe like a Jonathan David, if we could bring him in on the loan to buy, because he's younger, he's willing to press. Because I think bringing an older striker they won't have the legs to play the high, the constant pressing that we're looking for. But it's a tough one. It's going to be a tough market in January.
It's like whether we think we should or not, and whether we can or not is one debate. But whether we will or not drop £100 million on a striker in January is simply just not going to happen.
No,
it's not going to
happen.
So
I think it's just never going to happen. So I think it's like expectations are. Like all I can see in there is I'll see us spending 20-30 million quid on a centre back, which that's my minimum expectation. And ideally, like you started with, Rad, is that left back is going to be really, really important. That the Udogie injury has highlighted the importance of that role. And the striker, I just think it is going to end up being someone who's probably 31 to 33 years old, not getting the game time they used to get, but they've still got some decent minutes in them. They just can't play every week. That kind of player, a bit like what Llorente was, whether they're right or not, I think that's more the kind of striker I'd expect.
Llorente.
In the Champions League run, he was
fantastic.
Crucial.
Fantastic.
But we do need to wrap up there, unfortunately. I just wanted to finish off though, just with a shout again to UAE Spurs and Rad. So thanks for joining. You're on Twitter, right? Aren't you? As at UAE Spurs as well?
Yes, we are at UAE Spurs Twitter. We also we have a Facebook group you're welcome to join, official UAE Spurs supporters club. And also, if you go to Google and just type UAE Spurs, it'll take you to our page on the official TottenhamHotspur.com website.
Nice.
And the fourth thing to say is we watch all the games at the famous or infamous double-decker pub in Dubai, which you can find on Google or on the website as well.
And the atmosphere is amazing. Lots of people coming out these days. So
particularly this season. It's been we had over 100 for the Arsenal game, for example.
Awesome.
Yeah, we have our own area upstairs with certificates signed by Levy. We've got signed T-shirts on the walls and flags. And even the staff where, they have no idea who Tottenham are. And they're from the Philippines and they wear Tottenham shirts. So, and you get 30% discount on all your food and drink.
Oh, wow.
If you're a Tottenham supporter.
I think the shout out would be then, if you are going to Dubai or the UAE for any reason whatsoever, you should reach out to the supporters group and see where they're meeting up for the games and go hang out. And
every game is live
at
Double Decker.
Perfect.
There you go.
Sounds good. Well, thanks again for joining. And we always finish with a bit of an up the Spurs. So we'll finish with that and roll on Chelsea. We'll be back on Tuesday for our Chelsea preview where we'll do a bit of a deep dive into that game.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Up the Spurs.
Up the Spurs.